Hey guys, it's Sean back with another episode of Digging in the Crates. Once again, I reached out to some good friends of mine and asked them to showcase one of their favorite records from their collection. I know it's a daunting task because how the hell are you going to pick just one, but let's just see what they picked.
Hey Sean, how you doing? Thanks so much for inviting me into Diggin in the Crates, the show I'm really digging. Can't wait till Netflix picks it up. I'm Tom Hayes. You've probably seen me on the news over the past few decades, and I'm coming to you not so live from my music studio at home. This is where my band hangs out, my band The Twisters. Here's a shameless plug for us. We've been around since 1981. Come see us in a pub someday when life gets back to normal. Now, Sean has asked me to profile my favorite album, which is impossible. It'd be hard doing like top 10. So here's how I broke it down. My favorite band is the Beatles. I've been a Beatles fan since a kid. My older brother introduced me to the Beatles back in the 60s. And my favorite Beatles album is right here. The White Album. The double album, actually. Now, their producer, George Martin, tried to get the band to turn this into a single album, and I'm glad he lost that fight because there's so many great songs, like Back in the USSR, Oh Bloody, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, a great song by George Harrison, Helter Skelter, and of course, Birthday. But it's also woven together with a bunch of little sort of bits of songs that are fantastic. My favorite is actually I Will, a little acoustic song written by Paul McCartney. Now, I took my daughter Kelly to see Paul McCartney about 10 years ago. And after the show, it was a Friday night, Saturday night show. Saturday morning, she saw in the paper that McCartney was signing autographs after the show in his hotel. My daughter came up with a great idea, and she said, let's go see him tonight after the Saturday show. So I thought, okay, we'll go along, give it a try. We went to the airport, found the private gate. Tons of people were already there trying to do the same thing. Now, this is a great 2-hour story, and if I ever see you in a pub, I'll tell you every word of it. But trying to condense it right now, we're standing in a lineup. His bus pulls up. A security guy comes out, and he starts walking the line, asking people, who are you? Where you been? Did you see the show? What have you got to sign? He was trying to get rid of the e-bears. He gets up to me, and he grabs the White Album out of my hand, and he goes, what's the first song? I know this album inside and out, and I went blank. The guy next to me goes, Back in the USSR. And he goes, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to him. And he goes, what's the last song? And I said, Number 9 and Good Night. And he smiles, gives me back the album, and then the two of us, me and my daughter Kelly, were picked out of the line, taken around the bus, and there's Paul McCartney standing there signing autographs for about half a dozen fans. So Kelly gets up to Paul McCartney, and all she's got is this little piece of paper, and he takes it and signs his name, Paul McCartney. She then hands him back the paper and says, can I please get you to draw a peace sign? She wanted to get a Paul McCartney peace sign tattoo, and he's like, sure. Gives him back the paper, and then he drew this peace sign for her, which you can see he left out the middle stem of the peace sign, but that's another story. Kelly then says, can I have a hug? And he's like, sure, love, sure. He gives my daughter a hug, and then I was up next, and that's when he signed my White Album. Gave it back to me, and then I said, can I have a hug? And he's like, sure, man, sure. And I reach in, I give him a hug, and I say, I love you, man. And that is why I'm choosing the White Album as my favorite album today. Thanks so much, Sean, for inviting me on the show. And just to wrap it up, just so you know, my daughter did actually go and get the Paul McCartney peace sign tattoo done, and so did her dad. Thanks, Sean.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Casey. I'm album operator on Instagram, and I'm definitely psyched that Sean asked me to contribute a record for this video series he does, because I love listening to people talk about their collections. I'm in the basement down here with mine. I've been collecting records since like the early 90s. A lot of hip-hop here. We got funk and soul, jazz. I love reggae. I love Brazilian music. Whole bunch of other stuff. I kind of see record collecting through a hip-hop lens in a way, if that makes any sense. Really inspired by some of the 90s hip-hop producers, and I make beats myself too. So that's kind of where I'm coming from records. The one I chose to share with you, it's kind of going to seem random and maybe a little bit odd, but this is Money Mark's Keyboard Repair. Here's your man right here, Mark Ramos Nishida. This was the keyboardist for the Beastie Boys for a time. I mean, you definitely know his iconic organ line on So What You Want. Why did I pick this record? The more I think back on it now, and my music sensibilities, I owe a lot to this record. I think I've personally underrated how impactful this album was on my, like I said, music sensibility and my method of collecting. And what do I mean by that? This is a funky, instrumental little album, jazzy and quirky and weird, real DIY aesthetic, a kind of a lo-fi production sound, which is something I've always loved in music. And it really set me up, I think. At that point in '95, I was really into the Beastie Boys, which is why this came on my radar, obviously. I was eating up everything they even remotely touched at the time. It really opened up my ears for the record collecting I was going to do in the years to come after, right? It opened up my ears to dub reggae. This is one of the first instrumental albums that I was obsessed with. You know, I associate this album with, I used to have the dub tape of it. It was right when I got my license. I was like 16. I remember just, those early days of when you're first driving around in your car, the music, you're so impressionable, and I wore that tape out, and I think it was really the first instrumental album. There's some lyrics on it, but album I was obsessed with. So, even today I love listening to instrumental hip hop, instrumental funk and soul, or I don't really like the term rare groove, but you know what I mean, like the kind of music I try to collect and listen to a lot today. And my favorite hip hop producer of all time is Madlib, and I actually see a very strong connection between Madlib and this album too. The same kind of lo-fi, do-it-yourself kind of sound and ethos, really. And also, if you ever see an organ on a record, you gotta buy the record. If you see an organ on a record, buy the record. All right. Shout out to Sean. Thanks for doing this. Shout out to Money Mark. Shout out to the Beastie Boys. Love y'all.
Hi, I'm Derek Westerholm. I played in Parts Unknown, The Creeping Nobodies. Currently I'm playing in a project called Psychic Weapons and have broadcasted on CIUT 89.5 FM, a show called No Beat Radio that's still going to this day, not with me. I'm going to talk to you about two albums by the Talking Heads. Fear of Music, 1979, and Remain in Light, 1980. Both were produced by Brian Eno, the last of three he produced, and they really expanded the palette of Talking Heads at the time. One of the things that I will tell you for me is that I put these two albums on cassette, and when I did, I flipped this one. And I think the sides work better the opposite way. Talking Heads made a mistake. I will also tell you that Remain in Light has one of the best beginnings, and it is this. It doesn't get better, I don't think. And also, I will tell you that at this time, they expanded their lineup and ended up being 10 members, I think, and they debuted that lineup in my very city that I live in, Toronto, at the Heatwave Festival. And I think that's kind of amazing, and it makes me happy. I also got this out of the North York Public Library, which also made me happy. And I will say also that the video for this is fantastic. It was Once in a Lifetime, was a single from it, and it broke a lot of ground at the time, and MTV was just getting popular. David Byrne hit himself in the head. You should check that out too. Check out all the projects that happened around the time. You could make about 7 different albums with the same members, and really, honestly, they hold up over the years. Check them out. Thank you very much for having me be a part of this, and take care.
All right, so Sean asked me to pick one album that means more to me than any other, and I'm sorry, Sean, but I can't do it. It's got to be more than one, and it begins with a band that started it all for me, and that is U2. In 1987, when I was 13 years old, this album came out, The Joshua Tree. This is the album that means more to me than any other. It begins with 4 monster tracks, Where the Streets Have No Name, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, With or Without You, and Bullet the Blue Sky, which is a staple of their live shows. But it's track number 5, Running to Stand Still, which is a simple song, just a couple of chords, not very loud, but it's my favorite song of all time. When I was a teenager, I lived with my mom in Oshawa, my dad lived in Ottawa, and I would take the VIA train back and forth when I was visiting. And just the rhythm section of Larry Mullen Jr. and Adam Clayton, it always synced up with the rhythm of the train, just swaying back and forth. And I just wore out a couple of cassettes on my Sony Sports Walkman. This is an album that, you know, has always meant just so much to me. And this photo here, this is a place I want to go to. This is on my bucket list. There's actually a plaque in the desert in the Joshua Tree National Park that says, "Have you found what you're looking for?" The actual Joshua Tree, I guess, died a few years ago, but they still have a plaque in its place. These guys have just done it for me almost every single album, and you choose the Joshua Tree, number 1 all time. As far as live bands go, Pearl Jam. This album is my favorite Pearl Jam album. It begins with a very, very quiet song called Sometimes, and it just lulls you into this false sense of security, and just when it's kindly, you know, just fading out, all of a sudden, bam, Hail Hail kicks in, no gap between the songs, just power chords and so much energy. I saw them in Berlin a couple summers ago, and, you know, they played Lucan, and I was in the mosh pit, and it was just insane. U2 and Pearl Jam, my favorite 2 bands of all time. I just can't get enough of them, especially on vinyl. So everyone knows those bands. But one band that a lot of you probably haven't heard of yet, but I believe you will, is a local band from Oshawa, Crownlands. This is their first album released on a major label. Came out this year. I saw them open for the Tea Party. I saw them open for Jack White. They've opened for The Who, not The Who, the classic rock band from England, but The Who, HU. They've opened for them. I think they opened for Primus as well. So big things happening for these guys. They're the band of the year for Oshawa for the last 2 years. But I just want to show you this as well. Not only a great sounding album, but look at this. How cool is that? Just seeing the, you know, again, the care of releasing just a very cool, unique product. It's a very classic rock sounding thing. If you like Rush or Led Zeppelin, you probably be into these guys. That's Kevin and Cody. Cody is the drummer and also the singer of the band. And Kevin is he just wails on the guitars. He's not a very big guy, but he brings out the double neck guitar, and he's got the long hair, and he's got it, you know, float around during the shows. So a lot of great stuff from them as well. So watch out for Crownlands. And that's it for me. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, everybody, for watching and for listening. And hopefully you like my selections.
I just asked him to pick one. I'm sorry, guys. Anyways, I'm going to end this off. I've actually got a record I want to show you guys. And it's this artist named C.W. Stone King.
Come on along, come on along. Hear the marching of the drum.
He's an Australian artist with American-born parents, and I came across his music online. Like, he's actually a more recent artist. Kind of actually reminds me of like Cab Calloway or like Tom Waits or Screamin' Jay Hawkins. You know, he's one of those artists that really has a stage presence. I've never seen him live before, but I'm hoping once this pandemic's over, he'll be touring again, because I'd love to see this guy live.
Standing in the weeds early next day, I saw the meat wagon rolling away. I seen Matilda laying in the back, her old mother wearing a suit of black.
He's got several albums, but this particular one here is Jungle Blues. There's just like a mixture of really early calypso sounding music and hokum blues, where I think he does such an incredible job of emulating that era's sound.
The shade in palm trees bend and sway.
And just like the last few guys that showcased their records, I didn't have just one of his records. I got two. This one is Gone Boogaloo, not to be confused with the gun rights activist. This has nothing to do with that, I promise. But anyways, just check out his music. I'm not going to go through the track list on here, but just check it out. He's such a great artist, and I really hope that he'll continue to tour once this pandemic's over. So that's going to be it for this episode of Digging the Crates. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned because I've got another special episodes coming up soon with a bunch of friends of mine as well. So stay safe out there, and I'll be back. See you later.
Mama got the blues, and what